All right, we want to welcome an amazing guest to our Beyond the Blade podcast. As you know, I'm Dr. Zuri, and we're going to be speaking today to Caro van Hove. She is the president and CEO of Revelle Aesthetics, and that is a company that is basically the proponent or the technology called Avéli. We were talking earlier about the different pronunciations of the device. We were actually laughing because in Miami we call it Avéli, and so our Hispanic roots always tend to come out. But we're very excited to have her on the show. We want to thank her for coming in and participating in this very, very important discussion about cellulite and this technology that has come on board, which I have been using already for quite some time. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a fan, so pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Talk to us a little bit about your background, how you got into this world of aesthetics and medical technologies, and what brought you to do this.
Yeah. It all happened serendipitously. I am from a little country called Belgium, but in 1997, I ended up in New York, and I started working at a crisis consulting firm in New York City. And one of the clients that called us up one day was a small ophthalmology company that was launching a very new drug for the sake of aesthetics. And that company was Allergan. And so they were ready to launch Botox Cosmetic at the time. So this was the year 2000. But obviously there was lots of, I think, sensitivities to think about before launching, because at that point the world knew lotions and potions and they knew plastic surgery, but injectables hadn't made its way into the US market yet. And so they wanted to be really thoughtful as to how to introduce a drug like this that had a very rich therapeutic history, but also now new aesthetic benefits. And so that's how I was introduced to Allergan, and I stayed with the company for a long time because obviously as a woman, very passionate about aesthetics, to have a chance to launch Botox and fillers and breast implants was a quite exciting time. So I've stayed in this field for a long time, and after that I went into the finance world. So I worked for private equity, and then I moved into the startup world, meaning working for companies that had ideas of new products and really taking those products and developing them into something new.
Wow, that's fantastic. Very interesting. Tell us about how Avéli came about. We all know about the market of cellulite and how a lot of our patients are looking for a solution. I try to mention this a lot in my consultations and my conversations with my patients about how can we help with that condition. It's a very challenging one to treat. And I really think Avéli has done an amazing job of coming into the market and offering this technology. Maybe tell us how it started and what your vision is for the company.
So a few years ago, I was contacted by the professor of medicine at Stanford University, and he phoned me up and he said, Caro, I'm Dr. Josh McHour. We don't know each other, but I think I have the solution for cellulite. And of course, having been in the space for so long, my first reaction was like, sure you do. Because obviously in the field of aesthetics, right, we've been so focused on the face. And over the years, obviously we've done great work for breast enhancements and breast aesthetics and the midriff, but sort of the lower body and specifically cellulite was never solved. So when he phoned me up, I had a high degree of skepticism, but also quite a lot of intrigue because, to your point as a surgeon, you know that many, many women are bothered by this. So essentially, if you look at just how big of an issue cellulite is, 90% of us have it. And it's the misperceptions is that you can diet it away, or maybe it's because of age or more. It's not true. So it truly is something that happens post-puberty, and it's like acne. It's caused by many different things that we can't, essentially pinpoint. So I said, okay, let's meet. I'm intrigued enough. And essentially he explained why he had become so obsessed with cellulite and what he had done over the last few years in sort of a stealth mode. And the long and short of it was he had developed a company, this professor of medicine at Stanford, and that company was really focused on looking at diseases where there were still solutions that needed to be found. And a few years ago, he started to look at body aesthetics. And everybody kept saying, of the body, really, you need to solve something for cellulite because 90% of women have it. There's a lot of misperceptions. 7 out of 10 women have these dimples or divots. And so he brought a group of engineers together that went into a lot of cadaver labs to really research why has everything failed. And to your question about that, essentially what, how did Avéli came about? It's because of that. So when they were in the cadaver labs, they started to realize that when you look up cellulite, it explains it as an issue that is caused by a thinning dermis, right? The skin becomes thinner, your fat cells will become bigger, and then you have these little bands underneath the skin, and they put tension on the skin, they pull the skin down. And all those things matter. They cause the dimples and the divots and the depressions. But what people don't understand and what the literature did not show is that of all those things, it's these bands that pull down the skin that really cause the divot, but they're not a single band that is right underneath that dimple. It's almost like a whole web, a complicated kind of 3D structure, if you will. And so when the engineers realized that, like, that's what causes the dimple, that whole network of bands, then why don't we just design something, a little tool that can go underneath the skin and really help you identify where is that septal network, where are these bands, and release them in a very precise way. And that's what led to the design of Avéli. And so it was an ingenious kind of observation of just the anatomy and being very focused, and then coming up with a tool that just made sense. And so Avéli is now truly a one-time treatment for cellulite, right? So in the right hands, like yourself, you have essentially the opportunity to go underneath that skin to release all that tension on the skin. And so that makes it a one-time treatment. We treat dimples, buttock, as well as thigh. It is a long-term result. So we did studies out to 1 year, and it also shows that when you release those bands effectively, they don't reattach, regrow. So essentially, truly, the easing of the tension on the skin remains. And then we can treat it all just kind of in one session. The downtime is very little. I'd love for you to comment on your own experience, but that's why Avéli has a 91% worth it rating already.
Yeah, no, and that's fantastic. And we have experienced that in my office. It's a very simple procedure.
Yeah.
It doesn't take any significant amount of time to perform.
Yeah.
We typically just see a little bit maybe of like local swelling or maybe a bruise here and there.
Yeah.
But that's very tolerable. We do a lot of treatment with arnica to just help with a little bit of swelling, which is a natural supplement if you haven't heard of arnica before, but it really does a good job with any bruising on the surface. We do it during surgery. We do it out of surgery in the clinic setting as well. So it's very a versatile tool that you can use in and out of the operating room. Of course, while you're undergoing a general anesthesia procedure, it's a great time to do it.
Of course,
because you don't feel anything, and it's just part of your entire package, and you recover all at the same time. So we have found it to be very helpful for the cellulite dimples. Really, there isn't anything else on the market that we've been able to pinpoint that can do the same type of job as Avéli, give us the long-term results with almost zero complications in my hands, thankfully, and such a high patient satisfaction rate. It's very difficult in the world of aesthetics to find the technology that you can employ that has such high satisfaction. With our surgical procedures, if we can get an 80% satisfaction rate, we're more than happy. And some of that can be subjective, but with Avéli, not so much, because it's a little bit more objective, because you can really see that dimple really release. And that's big for a lot of patients.
And that's why I'm so excited you're doing this podcast, right? Because I think your education is superb. But if we look at how women treat cellulite, they just don't know that you have that option available. So they use creams and lotions. But with the creams and lotions, you don't penetrate the skin. You don't get to those bands. You can't release it. So it requires something that's more powerful to go underneath the skin, right? And so that's what has earned us this high satisfaction rating, because we're able to just release all that tension very effectively. And Avéli we're fairly new in the US market, but a few years, but we've already treated over 6,000 women. And so because we know how to treat it so well, that's why it's a very repeatable procedure, right? It truly is. It will do the job, which I think is very important. Because when I started the company, Revelle, the name of Revelle means like we'll help women reveal their true selves. But we wanted to do that through smart aesthetic solutions. And for us, smart means results that are actually worth paying for,
Right.
and results that are reproducible in your hands.
Exactly.
And so I think that's very important. Avéli is truly a procedure that does a job. And to your point, the beautiful thing is it's under local anesthesia,
Yeah.
you know, unless you say, I want to also use this opportunity to treat other issues in the lower body. And I think we should talk about that.
Yeah.
But if you're just treating the cellulite, buttock, thigh, sides of the thigh, back of the thigh, you can do it under local anesthesia in just an in-office setting. Or obviously visionaries like you that look at the lower body more globally and want to do also a great job of treating other issues like laxity or fat, you might take it into the OR and combine it with other things.
Yeah, and so before we got on the show, we were talking about multimodality therapy,
For
and
sure.
I think that's very, very important in terms of how we can modify the lower body. How can we improve our results? And so let's talk a little bit more about those combinations. In my practice, what I've been doing is the use of what we call Renuvion, which used to be known for a lot of our Hispanic patients actually as J Plasma, but they rebranded and now we're with Renuvion. But nonetheless, I very much enjoy the combination of the two technologies. My goal is to try to create the tightest result that I can from a skin laxity perspective. And so I always use it when I do liposuction cases as well to try to get that type of skin tightening. We've had a podcast with some of the visionaries of Renuvion here on our show. And so if you're listening and you want to learn more about Renuvion, please come to that podcast. But let's talk about a little bit. I know you've been traveling overseas. I know you've been in different countries. And so we're very intrigued to hear what our other colleagues are doing.
Yeah. So I think with regards to combination, right, when we started with the launch of Botox Cosmetic, I'd like to remind all your listeners and all of us women, right, first there was the launch of Botox Cosmetic, right? So it was like an injectable for wrinkles. But then obviously it led to global rejuvenation, right? And so today when you go into any aesthetic provider that has great skills, they will look at your face holistically, right? They will say, okay, what bothers you? Is it the lines? Is it the loss of volume? Is it the skin texture? And that leads generally to essentially a proposal of multimodality treatments. Yes. So we'll do maybe a toxin for the wrinkles. We'll add some filler for the volumization. We'll do some skin resurfacing with energy-based devices and so on, so that you truly have different issues tackled with the right tools. And so the lower body is something very similar. So anatomically, when you look at women's lower bodies, so waist down, we generally have three issues, which is obviously cellulite, so all the dimples, the divots. There's the issue of fat, too much or too little sometimes, right? Yeah. And then you have the issue of laxity, so loose skin. And so what we preach when we launch Avéli in a practice like yours is that when you diagnose or you essentially look for the cellulite, also look at what else is going on in the tissue. And Avéli, because it works so well, is a great product to start with, but then to also add these other treatments to treat the laxity and to treat the fat. Because I always say as a woman, why would you stop with treating one issue when you have tools for the other issues, right? Exactly. We would be much happier. And so since we've launched Avéli, that truly is what we've seen in practice like yours. Visionary kind of surgeons who look at it and say, okay, you need Avéli for the cellulite, but you also have laxity. So Renuvion or J Plasma, a great option. And you have some little fat pockets that you can't diet away. So let's do a little bit of liposuction. Or you might say, look, I have some skin tightening technologies and radiofrequency microneedling would be great. Right. So I really think it's important that us women, if you are bothered by anything in the legs or the booty, which for most of us is like a silent confidence killer, right? We don't wear shorts, we don't wear bathing suits, we don't wear tight pants. So I really think go to the right provider like you and just say, Dr. Zuri, I don't like my legs or I don't like my booty. And you'll get truly a really comprehensive, diagnosis, which I think is very important.
No, it's extremely important. Tell us about your travels, to Colombia. What are they doing there? Because I'll be honest with you, all of us Miami surgeons were always, feeding off of each other from the surgeons in Latin America and the surgeons in the U.S. And so, I'm interested to maybe educate the audience as to what some of their, their perspectives are.
So obviously most Latin countries, I think the body and the contouring of the body is very important, just as important as in the face, right? In the United States, because of obviously the way the introductions of new products work, the United States have been very focused on the face. And I think in most Latin countries, it's very much whole body and body specific. So I think Latin surgeons are always looking for the perfection. I think also Latin women have a real aspiration, that is they want to go for perfection. So that means the perfect curvature, the perfect volume, the perfect skin smoothness, and so on. So Colombian surgeons in our case are always looking, to your point, for the right combo. What will tighten the skin the best? What will contour the lower legs the best, or even the midriff? And how can we take any sort of imperfection out of it, such as cellulite? So they are always looking for new techniques, but also new products to add to their procedures. But also, one of the things that I was just in Colombia, in Bogota, and several surgeons came together, and fibrosis is another issue that is very important. So women who've had liposuction, but you have these irregularities. I don't want to speak as a surgeon, so I think you'd explain it better. Sure. But, when you have these irregularities, right, these kind of contractures, it creates kind of a very unevenness of the surface. And it can happen after liposuction, but it also can happen through other issues. And Avéli is also approved for soft tissue dissection in general and plastic surgery. So they were quite excited about using it in that fashion too.
Yes.
But I think in general, the whole world is going to start focusing on the body. Because, like I said, the last 2 decades all been about the face, great innovation. But now here's the medical weight loss revolution, right? Yes. And I know you had a bariatric surgeon just before me, so I'm sure that was a big topic, and I can't wait to listen to it. But medical weight loss revolution is here. Almost 8 out of 10 Americans are on some sort of GLP-1. And when you lose all this weight, what is going to happen is that the number of people that are going to start considering more aesthetic treatments, because they don't want to just stop there. Now that they've lost all this weight, they want to continue to feel great about their bodies. And I think that's going to open up a lot of focus and desire for more body aesthetic treatments. And I'm quite excited about that.
No, I'm very excited about that as well. I mean, I think it has revolutionized my practice, the use of the GLP-1s.
Yes.
We're seeing a lot of weight loss patients, and we're very excited for them because, it's just a great way to get healthier, to feel better, to look better, and it's really been fantastic. I'm very much interested, after speaking with you, and we're going to dig deeper and have some of your team come by my office again about the other indication, which is what you were talking about. I do believe that the ramifications of a very aggressive liposuction in certain cases does increase the risk of this secondary fibrosis after lipo. And it's typically a very inflammatory reaction that the patient has, and it causes a significant amount of scar tissue, and it can lead to very poor aesthetic results and a lot of dissatisfaction in certain cases. So, we want to really start to think of Avéli as not just only a cellulite device, but also can help us in other secondary conditions that really these patients need a lot of help with that. Currently we don't have great treatments for that fibrotic reaction from a liposuction surgery. So I'd love to really dig deeper and learn more about how we can do that. Can you talk to our audience, because a lot of my patients are very interested. And this is one of the reasons why they opt to have surgery with us in my office, is because of safety.
Yeah.
So they're looking for a board-certified surgeon with experience. And so the FDA implications in the development of one of these technologies and all of the studies, can you speak to how difficult it is to get through all of this? And
for sure.
And so that they understand the degree of safety related to Avéli.
Yeah. Great question. And also, if I may, I think what you just mentioned, right? So the development of fibrosis and maybe, imperfect liposuctions leading to that. I think it's going to speak to your question around what's the safety that's required to launch products. But I think as a manufacturer of a product, when you're thinking about entering the U.S. market or any country, aesthetic medicine is still medicine, right? So that is very important. So I think it's very important to go to a provider who really understands anatomy, to go to a surgeon who understands the importance of technique, because tools are only as good as the hands that they're being put in, right? So, so I just think it's such an important point, which is not all liposuctions are the same. Not all Avéli results are the same. Like, really go to providers that really look at technique and take very good care of you. And then, so to that point, which is what is the process to getting a product like Avéli approved through the FDA? And the FDA is the Food and Drug Administration. So it's essentially the governing body that reviews all the data and the science behind a product before it approves for it to be sold and marketed here in the United States for human use. And so with Avéli, this was obviously, it started as an idea, but the development was several years, right? 5 years of just studying the underlying anatomy and then coming up with designs. And then obviously the most important part of all of it is the human clinical studies. So you have to enroll a sizable patient population, right, to perfect technique, perfect results. You have to follow very stringent protocols, clinical study protocols. You have to deliver results that are not only effective, but very safe. And when you satisfy all of that, then obviously it gets reviewed by the FDA. And it's a whole process before it gets cleared for use here in the United States. So that's the whole process we've gone through with Avéli. I think with regards to what our study showed, so we followed our patients out to 1 year. So I think that is very important, which is you don't just look at it for a few weeks and say, you look great, I hope you do well. You really want to follow them out to 1 year and study the tissue and study kind of the result. And so we followed the patients out to 12 months. But in terms of kind of complications that, we experienced, and we say that, and you say that to your patient in the aftercare instructions, which is you're going to bruise, right? Because Avéli is a little instrument, but we go underneath the skin, we tunnel through the skin. It's very comfortable, but we tunnel through the skin, and then obviously we release those bands. So you're going to have bruising. We always say that you'll have bruising for a couple of weeks. Follow your physician's instructions. We always say also you're going to feel sore, right? Because you're going underneath the skin, you're causing some trauma to the tissue. So we say you're going to feel a little sore, so take some Tylenol, follow your physician's instructions. And then we say, because with Avéli, we have to make small little punctures and entry points, right? To tunnel through. And we generally like to do them in sort of what we call the gluteal crease, or the bottom of the buttock. They're small, they're 3.5 millimeters, so it doesn't need a suture, it just needs a steri-strip. But because we first apply local anesthesia, a formulation of local anesthesia, you're going to have some weeping of that anesthesia, because not all the anesthesia gets absorbed right away in the body, right? So you're going to have some more leaking for a good 12 hours, we say. And those are the things that we experienced in the study also, right? So in the beginning, so you're gonna bruise, you're going to be sore, you'll have some weeping. And other than that, patients did extremely well. Over 90% of our patients, they went back to their daily activities within 24 hours. But we say follow your physician's advice. So don't go crazy, don't go exercising right away. So, and of course, it all depends on how many dimples you have treated too, right? So, but in the study, that's what we saw. Obviously, in the right hands, Avéli is a very precise instrument. So there's some techniques, right, that need to be applied to make sure that you don't have things like a seroma, right, a pocket of fluid. When that happens, your surgeon, your provider will know exactly what to do. But other than that, it was a safe procedure and highly effective.
Yeah, and I have experienced everything that you've said. For some of our colleagues actually listen to the podcast, some other plastic surgeons in the community and abroad. If you've ever had a seroma with any procedure, if you're a patient, a seroma is basically an accumulation of liquid in a space of the body where it's a little bit detached from the connective tissue underneath. And it's a very simple thing to do. You basically are going to clean the skin, and you're going to enter the skin with a needle that's going to be able to aspirate the liquid out. It can maybe take 2 or 3 aspirations, but it will resolve on its own eventually. So don't be afraid of that. If you're a surgeon listening, that's a very simple thing, to do. Also, you can always reach out to my practice if you have questions about maybe Avéli or my experience with Avéli. My doors are always open, and we can have a conversation for the surgeons out there. Talk to us about Mission Plásticos from a personal standpoint, because I was reading your biography, and I thought that was very interesting. I just came back from a missionary trip in the Dominican Republic about a month ago, and so we were doing some work out there. But talk to us about your involvement in that organization.
Yeah. Well, I think Mission Plásticos was an organization that essentially was founded by a plastic surgeon. Because I think that in the field of aesthetics, there's always this misperception, like, what is the real benefit of aesthetic treatments and so on. Yeah. And ultimately, I'm extremely passionate about the fact that if you elevate somebody's confidence, you do essentially a lot of good in the world. Yeah. And so this plastic surgeon in particular, he traveled around the world and noticed that in so many countries, there's a need for aesthetic support. So especially in children, there's lots of countries where you have children who have massive burns or cleft palates, or there are women who have breast cancer in third world countries and feel completely deformed and don't have the option of reconstruction with breast implants. And so he essentially took on this global mission that he would organize this network of volunteers of plastic surgeons to go into these countries and to essentially go on very extensive missions to aesthetically kind of improve all of these deformities and issues and really changing lives. And so Mission Plásticos was designed to fulfill that purpose. And so it's become a very impressive organization with hundreds and hundreds of surgeons from the US and other countries getting involved and just going on these missions, anything from Nepal to Mexico to Eastern Europe, just supporting women who need breast reconstruction or children who have congenital deformities or burn victims, because in many third world countries, kids get food through just kind of campfires and so on. And so fire and burns is a really big issue. So I got involved with them to help raise funding and donations. And it's been one of the most fulfilling kind of roles that I've had. And so I think it's an extremely impressive organization. And if you don't know it yet, you can always look it up and get involved in whether it's monetary or just they're always looking for aids, supporters to help go on these missions.
Yeah, we're definitely going to check it out. This is the first time that I come across Mission Plásticos.
And in fact, it's not just in other countries. Here in the United States, too, there's so many women that don't have proper health insurance. So again, when you've had cancer and you have a double mastectomy and you feel completely deformed, this is an organization that also helps on U.S. soil. So they have many U.S. surgeons like yourself that open up their practices to do several breast reconstruction cases pro bono for these women. And their lives are changed forever. So it's a very profound purpose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, when you talk about children and the aesthetic implications of, them growing up, there are also some very simple procedures that I found to be very powerful, which is the otoplasty, which is, the mockery and the bullying that these, these children, they go through. And it's such a great operation. It's just a very, very simple, great recovery, minimal follow-up. So we're definitely interested in contributing to helping, to helping in any way that we can. Is there anything else? I want to open the floor to you and maybe give you an opportunity. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us about Revelle, about Avéli?
I think most importantly, I think the topic of cellulite is so important. I always say it's charming to have wrinkles, but for women, there's nothing charming about having cellulite. In fact, we call it the silent confidence killer, right? Truly, it is so handicapping to women in what we wear, whether or not we run, if we want to wear a bathing suit and so on. So, and most of us, including myself, have spent a lot of money on creams and lotions. So my main point is stop wasting your money, truly, and understand that cellulite is not an issue you have caused. You cannot diet this away. You can't exercise it away. It's truly kind of a hormonal issue that affects us as young as 16 years and older. And so go to an experienced surgeon like yourself. Dr. Zuri is fantastic. Understand what causes cellulite. And it truly is those bands that pull down the skin. And if you are extremely bothered by this, or it really handicaps you in your confidence levels, then see if it's an option for you. It's a one-time treatment, can be done in the office or the OR. It works immediately in the sense that it releases that tension on the skin, and the results are long-term. And I think for most of us women, I think it's important you talk about it.
Yes.
Your aesthetic practice will have a solution. Most women are too embarrassed to talk about it, or they don't think something works. And I also encourage, I know your practice is excellent at doing that, but other surgeons listening, bring this up with your patients.
Yeah.
Your women, actually, the research we done of almost 4,000 women, we asked them, do you want your physician to talk about cellulite and to ask you if it's an issue? They all said, yes, we want you to ask us about it. So I think, again, let's break the taboos, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about this more openly.
Yeah.
And then know that if you're out there and you're really bothered, then you should definitely ask about Avéli.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we want to thank you so much for
Of
joining
course,
us.
it's such a
It's
privilege.
really been a pleasure and honor to have you. Thank you for taking the bull by the horn with cellulite.
Yeah.
And really giving us surgeons an option on what we can offer for our patients, a safe, reliable, very good results. Like we've talked about the research at a year, FDA approved device. So if you're thinking about it and you're kind of on the fence, please come by the office. We're happy to talk about cellulite with all of our patients. And I very much look forward to talking to you again, down the line about the other indications for
Yes.
Avéli. And so we're gonna definitely investigate that further
Wonderful.
and incorporate that into the practice. So thank you for being on the show, and we hope to
Thank
see you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.